In this new age of gaming, where the task is to make something free and then make people pay for it later, it's sort of given a bad rap to the free-to-play style of game. Mobile games and Fortnite have given free-to-play games the reputation of just being scummy cash grabs that aren't actual real titles. But then something comes along that interests you. Something that looks so cool and so unique, and my god, is free to play. This is Century Age of Ashes. This video is sponsored by Rise of Kingdoms. With 12 different civilizations in the game, you can take to this real-time strategy epic as the Romans, British, Koreans, Vikings, and so many more. Each civilization having their own unique army and architecture to use the faction-specific skills in order to defeat your opponents. My faction, of course, are the Romans, conquering the barbarians with incredible infantry. It really is a sight to see. But the best bit, well, this is where the battle scenes come in. Rise of Kingdoms introduces realistic battles with the use of your commanders giving up their skills in order to turn the tide of a war. What's more is right now the Rome and Viking campaign will be coming soon. Rise of Kingdoms is going to be bringing out a new competition to show the battle of these greys. You're going to be seeing both Rome and Vikings in round-on-round fights with an accompanying website to be able to vote on who you think will become victorious, with the chance of winning some great prizes like an iPhone 13 and AirPods Pro. So who do you think will come out on top? Vote for your favorite civilizations and get involved. So if you want to find out more about Rise of Kingdoms, make sure you check the link in the description below to download it today. Century Age of Ashes is a free-to-play multiplayer dragon battle game. Master a growing roster of classes and dragons, compete in intense arena battles, and rule the skies in fast-paced aerial combat. And my god, fast-paced is definitely the way to describe this. Now, this video is going to be more of a first impressions. I have a few hours in the game so far, just trying to get a feel of what it is and the gist that the developers are going for. So, who are the developers? Well, Playwing Limited haven't really made anything much in the past, especially under that name. Century Age of Ashes is actually their first foray into the Steam market. However, they do have another game called Instant War, which is, well, a mobile game. Yet Playwing decided they wanted to step away from that generic looking mobile game and do something different. It looks like they put a hell of a lot of money into this game because whilst it is free to play, my god, does it look and in some ways feel pretty premium. So, what is Century Age of Ashes? As mentioned, it is a dragon battle game. You start and you pick a class. At the beginning, you'll find 3 different classes. A more tank fighty class. You also have a more defensive healy class that is kind of based on helping allies rather than dealing loads of damage to enemies. And you, of course, have your stealth sly class. The one that goes and drops bombs on people's heads from above. You know, that kind of thing. And they're all pretty fun to play. And with these classes, you also get dragons to pick. Of course, you start with your basic dragons, but later on you get eggs and they can be hatched into more dragons. They could all be customized with cool armors. You can choose what abilities they have. Anything from a smoke screen to deter people from tracking you down, to dropping mines in the sky, and of course, sending frost missiles out to disable some other dragon riders' turning abilities. They're all pretty cool. But your dragons have 2 main attacks. You have your main pulse fireball that you can throw at somebody. It's longer range and it locks onto the enemy target. Or when you get closer, you can use right click to use fire breath, dealing a ton more damage, but with that lack of range, weighing up which is the best use in which situation. The game looks goddamn beautiful. The graphics for this are gorgeous. It's made on Unreal Engine 4, and you can definitely see that they have utilized it to the best of their possibilities. Optimization wise, I've had no issues with it so far, and there aren't really any reports on it being all that badly optimized. Now, the thing is, it's very new. It's only just come out, and with it comes a few issues with matchmaking. Because it's online only, of course, you'd want to be paired up with people similar ranks, but that doesn't really happen just yet. Especially on launch, you were getting new level 2s paired up with level 20s, 30s, and it would just be annihilation. I found it in many of my games. We just either swamp the enemy team or they'd swamp us. Very rarely was it a close game. Don't get me wrong, it did happen, but it definitely feels like balancing has been an issue so far, with players at massive skill advantages playing against other people that have only just started. But the actual idea idea is fantastic. A dogfighting game, but playing on dragons. The aesthetic is beautiful. Flying between castles and cliffs feels so satisfying. Just dodging a fireball as you can see it coming behind you and then sweeping round a tunnel and into a cliff feels so badass. This game makes you feel like an awesome dragon rider, and it accomplishes that fantastically. The tutorial is pretty intuitive. It tells you the basics of combat, flying, and of course the basic game modes that you'll be playing. The movement in the game when you're flying your dragons is slick, and the animations fit perfectly. From the dragons beating their wings to gain up speed, to then going into dives, sweeping, folding their wings behind their back as they gain speed, to finally spread them out when you break and turn a sharp corner. It looks and feels fantastic. One thing that I think some people might struggle with in the game, specifically regarding to its movement, is when you're flying your dragon, you really feel like you're flying a dragon. It's very weighty, especially trying to get a dragon to lift up into the air, to gain altitude. Feels like you're trying to lurch a dragon up. It definitely feels a little bit sluggish, but it kind of makes sense for what they're going for. You're not flying a fighter plane here. You're flying a beast that isn't always going to adhere to everything you say straight away. You really have to make sure you lug it round corners, and this just adds to the skill roof on this game, which, as I'll get into a little bit, is very, very high. So let's talk a little bit about the combat. When you get into games, you'll be playing just 3v3s to start with. You'll be playing game modes where you collect coins and you have to deliver them back to your home base, but they can be stolen. The enemy team can give you disadvantages like lock your home base for a short amount of time so you can't deliver any more coins. And of course, whilst you're trying to beat down the dragons that have treasure chests on their backs, you'll also be hunted by the enemy team. It's a fun thing. You also have Carnage, which is a bit later on. It's a 6v6 when you're fighting an all-out war. It's kills that you have to go for here, and whilst it is a lot of fun, it definitely lives up to its name of Carnage. Of course, later on in the game you'll be playing bigger and bigger battles, but of course once you unlock them, it'll be against harder and harder opponents as well. The combat in itself is cool, but there are some issues. As I mentioned, you have your fireballs, you have your fire breathing. You also have abilities, whether it's dropping mines, healing friendlies, or giving yourself some passive boosts. But the whole combat is based on this lock-on system. When you're chasing down an enemy dragon, you'll see a circle appear around it. Then eventually it will lock on. Anything you fire, from fireballs to fire breaths, will go straight to the enemy, and you don't really have to do anything else to it. It's almost like heat-seeking missiles within the game. Now, the enemy can dodge it. If they sweep around corners, of course, fireballs will just hit into the side of ravines. If they manage to do quick breaks and turns, you will miss them. But one thing I've really found is, especially using the fire breath, you'll just be locked onto constantly. And you'll see often when you're fighting an enemy, you will lock onto an enemy dragon, use your fire breath, and even if they're at a weird angle to your right, your fire breath will just turn and lock onto this weird angle that just deals tons and tons of damage to the enemies. And whilst it's fine when it's you against them, when they're doing it to you, it can be incredibly infuriating. This whole combat is based around this lock-on system, and it means some of the kills and some of the times that you're killed feel a little bit unearned. They feel too easy and can be very infuriating. But the problem is, I don't see any other way it could be done. You have a system like in War Thunder, where on arcade modes, little circles appear in front of the enemy, and it gives you a guide of where you should shoot in order to hit the oncoming planes. This is an alright idea for a big game like War Thunder because you're fighting in miles and miles of open space. But Century Age of Ashes is very fast-paced in close quarters arenas, so being able to just fire and try and track the shots in front of the enemy is going to be almost impossible, since moving, turning, and strafing can be done almost on the spot. So whilst this lock-on system isn't perfect and can be infuriating, I don't really see any other option for the game. So how does it play out in the multiplayer? Well, it is very, very fast-paced as mentioned. The maps are pretty small, but I think they work for the gameplay style they're going. So far, I played 3 or 4 variations of maps. I don't know how many more there are, but I don't think there'd be too many more than that so far. But all of them are quite unique. From the more open ice maps where you're flying in the open air to being able to duck down between little cliffs, to the cooler maps like fighting in the dunes where there's ravines you can go down into the earth, or flying through the skeletons of dead monsters from the past. It is amazing how they've crafted this and how well it works hand in hand with the combat system and the flight system that's been created. So it's a good game, right? Well, it has mostly positive reviews on Steam, so I think people are kind of enjoying it at the moment. I think its unique look and gameplay style is really holding people at the moment, but in terms of content, it is lacking somewhat. Of course, the game has just come out, but first impressions are still a big thing. They do need to add more maps and more game modes. One thing that I really think is an issue is sensory overload within games. Fast-paced is fantastic, but when you're going up behind a dragon, breathing fire on them, you have missiles coming at you from either side, abilities going off, the UI is going absolutely crazy with warnings like you're being hunted by another enemy whilst you're trying to chase someone else, then breathing fire into them and your whole screen just gets blasted with fireballs and you're unable to see anything, so you go crashing into a cliff. It is just sensory overload. There's so much on the screen at many times, and whilst it helps with going fast-paced and adrenaline fueling games, it can be too much and it can feel like you have no idea what's going on many times within your games. Additionally, it's free to play, so whilst it is a great game and you'll get a lot from it by just playing it for free, there are microtransactions. Things like XP boosts are within the game, which is almost unforgivable, especially at the moment where balancing between matchmaking isn't on point. So you can just buy XP boosts to get yourself better, get cooler dragons and new abilities, and then just fight against complete noobs. It isn't very well balanced so far, and the microtransactions do not help that. So there are many issues that do need to be sorted. But as a first impression, I think Century Age of Ashes is a fun, free-to-play game. It looks fantastic, but I think they made the right decision to make it free to play, especially with the amount of content and what's actually in it so far. But please, if you've played it already, let me know what you think. Do you enjoy the game, but what do you think about the inclusions of those XP boosts and microtransactions? I think there is still so much to be worked on here, but the potential is there. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, leave a dislike if you didn't. But until then, I will see you in the next one.